I have this question. I think China is a very unique country. It has very different history, culture, social norms, and political system. So given its uniqueness, it seems very hard to emulate China's policy response to COVID in other countries. So why are we still discussing China's policy responses?
I think there are important lessons that we can learn from China in general. And actually, there's a lot of work going on now to try to see what aspects of China's recent economic development can be usefully transferred to other settings. And so I think that's an interesting discussion. And I think actually China will also learn a lot itself from that kind of exchange and thinking about which aspects of its development can be relevant for other countries. When it comes to the specifics of the COVID response, I think it highlights a number of issues. It highlights the relative importance of local institutions and central institutions. It brings in the incentives at different levels of this sort of federative structure. You know, how much focus should you have on growth? How much focus should you have on health and welfare and all those things? So yes, we need to look at the Chinese experience, and after all, there were a lot of issues in the beginning in terms of to what extent information was really transferred from the local level to the central level, and there were clearly incentives to hide things in the beginning. How do you resolve that? I think it's a generic problem, not at all a pure Chinese problem. There were also then issues of you know, what exactly want you reward in a bureaucracy like the Chinese one. And again, that's a universal question. It's something that I know in Russia, for example, which, you know, it's not it's quite a different system from the Chinese one. They have worked a lot with providing incentives for individual governors, for example, and trying to specify indices and so on that can be used. Same thing for systems that have used in the United States to distribute federal grants, for example. So a lot of generic issues that are relevant, and we should study the Chinese experience closely, I think.
I have a question regarding leadership in this uncertain era. So I think more and more people realize that decisions made with perfect information is impossible. This is prominently demonstrated in this pandemic. Given the virus is novel but spreads rapidly, the country leaders had to make very swift decisions when there was little evidence. In other words, leaders essentially are taking gambles. So in this era of uncertainty, what kind of leadership do we need?
Well, I think there's a reason why countries in East Asia did better than many other countries, because they were looking at evidence. They were looking at evidence from previous pandemics or previous epidemics in Asia. So evidence base is a very important thing. The other aspect of leadership that I think comes out of this is the need to be transparent and to show. China was very quick in sharing the scientific information on the virus, for example, and that benefited the whole world. I think China could have been quicker and shown better leadership in being transparent about all the issues that it had in sort of dealing with the virus itself in China. But again, you know, China has learned a lot from this. I think there's been clear accountability. That's another aspect of leadership that is quite important. I think leadership has to be evidence-based, transparent, clear accountability. You know, a lot of the problems in many countries, and I think China is also learning from this, you know, who is responsible for what, and making sure that nothing falls in the cracks between institutions. And probably the last thing, and here I think we all have to learn a lot of lessons, is how we create a process that is inclusive, making sure that everyone who should be involved is involved in formulating these policies.
Join the Maryam Forum.
Join the Maryam Forum.
Join the Maryam Forum.
Join the Maryam Forum.